Mosin Nagants have a reputation for being garbage rods. However, they served from 1891 to, in some elements, through the Cold War, and in some other elements, all the way until today. So they can't be absolute trash, right? Well, I think a big part of their reputation is that people got these rifles in, never cleaned them, as in taking them apart and cleaning out all of the gunk, and because of that, they suffered from a lot of problems that were largely user error. So today I want to talk to you about the 3 ways that you can clean your Mosin Nagant to make it not a garbage rod. And this is 3 separate areas, all visible from this point of view. I'm going to start in the back and work my way up. And the first is the trigger. One of the 2 biggest complaints I hear about the Mosin Nagant is that the trigger is awful. I have had 2 Mosin Nagants. Both of them had decent enough triggers. They weren't great, however, they also weren't terrible. They didn't hold up to the reputation that I have heard. I think one of the reasons they have that reputation is because people have not cleaned their rifles. So the first thing you can do to make your Mosin Nagant less of a garbage rod is to clean off the trigger. Mine is nice and clean, and because of that, this pin falls out. So if you follow my advice and clean your trigger out really, really well, make sure that this pin stays in. I have put the rifle back together after that pin had fallen out and I didn't notice, and part of the problem was when I put the bolt in, it was difficult to get out because the bolt removal on this is pulling the trigger. So the way you clean off the trigger in this gun is to remove the screw and remove this pin, and then all of these pieces will come out. At that point, all you have to do is put them in hot water, and that will melt off the cosmoline, wipe them off dry, and oil them. You also should wipe off this whole area of the cosmoline, which can also be done either in hot water or just with like a heat gun that can also melt the oil. So it is pretty easy to melt cosmoline, you just need to get it hot. I've also heard of people just setting the parts out on a hot day, and all of the cosmoline would melt off, at which point they would just oil it up and clean it. So method 1, clean out your trigger. The second area to clean is your bolt. People will say that this rifle has a very sticky bolt, and to be fair, it does have a stickier bolt than some other platforms. However, a lot of the hate is unwarranted. So you should take your bolt apart completely in its entirety and clean it. The way you do that is first you rotate the rifle like that. Then you can pull these 2 parts off. The bolt head and guide, I don't really know what you would call that. Then you would have the bolt body, the cocking piece, the firing pin, which can be seen right there and right here, and then the firing pin spring, which is under all of this that you can't see. The bolt on this is pretty simple. It has very few components. However, all you have to do then is put this guide piece like this and unscrew the firing pin. Make sure you get it back together properly because you want to make sure the firing pin depth is correct. Same thing as with the trigger. You want to take these components apart, get all the cosmoline off. You can use Q-tips to get into the bolt head area really well. Just clean all of that out, and that will make your bolt much less sticky. The third and final part that you will often hear is that after people fire, they can't get the bolt open. So the bolt is in, they fired, and they can't get it up. The first Mosin Nagant I had that really, really bad, and I solved it fairly easily. The first way was just to get my pinky in there, try and clean out the chamber, try and clean out the locking lugs the best I can. However, the much better way that you will see many people suggest is to take a brass or a polymer brush. Don't use steel. I specifically bought a polymer 12-gauge brush, and that's worked for me pretty well. Then, attach this end to a power drill, stick the brush into your action, and just run it. Not super hard, not super fast, but a lot of that cosmoline will get undone. If you want to, you can heat up this area first as well, and that will help melt that. What you are doing is you are melting the cosmoline that is in the chamber and in the locking lugs. Cosmoline becomes gummy. It becomes sticky. And because of that, it can cause things like this to jam. Just generally speaking, you are getting gunk out of the locking lugs, which is where these actuate. When there's gunk in those locking lugs, it sticks. The other theory for why this may help, although I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to it, is that a lot of steel-cased ammo is lacquer coated like this right here, and that helps with feeding. It means that the rounds don't bind as hard. In fact, these work quite well. What I've heard is that when you fire, that lacquer coat melts and gets sticky with the cosmoline and just gets really gummed up all in there between the lacquer and the cosmoline. Again, I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that belief. However, that is the second one that I have heard. So, the 3 places to clean your Mosin Nagant to make it less of a garbage rod is the trigger, by taking it apart all the way, cleaning out all of the little areas, and that will make it much better, much crisper. Still not perfect, still not as good as an Enfield trigger. The second way, taking apart the bolt to its base components, with the exception of the extractor, which is right there, that can stay in the bolt head, and cleaning that out well. That will make it less gummy, and it means that your bolt will be less sticky after firing. Third, to make your bolt less sticky after firing, put a polymer or brass brush, I prefer polymer, on the end of a cleaning rod. Shove it inside of there with a power drill and spin it to clean out your locking lugs and to clean out your chamber. With these tricks, your Mosin Nagant will still probably be the worst rifle of World War II. You guys have a nice day, and I'll see you next Saturday. Goodbye.